The night was cold and dark. The rain fell hard on the empty streets, and the sound of thunder echoed in the distance. A young girl named Alina walked alone. Her thin clothes soaked, her hand shaking. She held a small piece of paper from the doctor, the name of a medicine written on it. That medicine was the only thing that could save her dying mother. Her mother, Mira, was lying on a broken bed at home, coughing, gasping for air. Alina could still hear her mother's weak voice in her head. "Please don't cry, my dear, I'll be fine." But Alina knew she wouldn't be fine. Not without the medicine. She ran from one pharmacy to another, knocking on doors. "Please, my mother is dying." "I need this medicine," she begged. But every shopkeeper shook their head. "It's too late, we're closed. Come tomorrow." Tomorrow? That word cut through her heart like a knife. Her mother might not survive until tomorrow. The rain grew heavier. Her feet splashed in dirty puddles. Her hair stuck to her face. She felt small and helpless in the big, uncaring city. A few people passed by with umbrellas. None of them stopped. None even looked at her. Her tears mixed with the rain as she whispered, "What should I do now, Mom?" Finally, she reached the last pharmacy on the street. Its lights were still on, but the sign said "closed" through the glass. She saw the medicine she needed, right there on the shelf. Glowing under the light, her heart raced. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass. If only she had money, if only someone would help. She looked around. The street was empty. The rain and darkness covered her like a blanket. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Forgive me, Mom." She picked up a small rock and hit the glass. The sound was sharp, the window cracked, then shattered. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it would burst. She climbed inside, her shoes slipping on the wet floor. The alarm screamed through the air. Red lights flashed across the shelves, but she didn't stop. She ran straight to the medicine counter. She grabbed the small white box with shaking hands, pressed it to her chest and turned to run outside. A loud voice shouted, "Hey! Stop right there." A guard had seen her through the camera. Alina's eyes widened with fear. She ran as fast as her legs could carry her. The rain hit her face, her breath came in gasps. She turned into a narrow alley, her feet splashing in water. The sound of sirens grew louder behind her. Blue and red lights danced on the wet walls. She clutched the medicine tighter, as if holding her mother's life in her hands. "Just a little more, just a little more," she whispered to herself. Her lungs burned, her legs ached, but she didn't stop. Suddenly she slipped and fell. The box flew from her hand and rolled near a drain. She crawled quickly, grabbed it before the water could take it away. Her fingers bled from the glass, but she didn't care. She stood up and ran again. Her breath turning into sobs, the sirens were closer now. The sound of police tires screeching filled the air. Alina darted through the alley and jumped over a broken fence. Her heart beat so fast it hurt. She could see the small light from her house far away. Her mother was waiting. "Dying," she whispered between breaths. "Hold on, Mom. I'm coming," but then a flashlight shone directly in her face. A man's voice shouted, "Stop! Police!" Before she could run, a strong hand grabbed her arm. She froze, her eyes wide with fear, the medicine box still in her hand. The rain poured harder, the siren stopped, and everything went quiet. The officer looked at her. A soaked, trembling girl, no shoes, no money, her face pale, her eyes full of tears. He didn't speak for a moment, just stared at her as the medicine box slipped from her hand and fell to the ground. Alina whispered softly, "Please let me go. My mom needs this." The officer bent down, picked up the medicine and looked at her again. His face softened for a second, but then he sighed. "You shouldn't have done this," he said quietly. Alina lowered her head, tears falling into the rainwater. The blue lights reflected on her wet face. The cold night held its breath as the young girl stood between right and wrong, between love and law, and as the car door closed behind her, the small white box, the medicine, still glowed faintly in the dark, a symbol of her love, her fear, and her desperate choice. The city slept, but one heart broke quietly under the storm. The rain was still falling, cold and heavy. The police car's siren echoed through the narrow streets, blue and red lights flashing in the dark. Inside the car, Alina sat in silence, her wet hair sticking to her face, her small hands shaking. Her clothes clung to her body, and the medicine box rested on the seat beside the officer. Every heartbeat felt like thunder in her chest. All she could think about was her mother. Lying alone at home, waiting, maybe dying, Detective Ryan sat in the front seat, his eyes fixed on the road. He had seen many thieves, many liars, but something about this girl was different. She didn't look dangerous. She looked heartbroken. Her eyes told a story of fear, love, and desperation. He wanted to believe her, but the law didn't allow feelings to decide right or wrong. Suddenly the radio buzzed. Suspect detained. Returning to station, another officer said. Ryan nodded but didn't reply. His mind was far away, thinking about his own mother, who had died years ago because they couldn't afford treatment. That memory burned deep inside him. He glanced at the rear mirror and saw Alina staring out the window, silent tears mixing with raindrops. As the car slowed near a red light, Alina noticed something. The door's lock wasn't fully closed. Her breath quickened. She knew this might be her only chance. Her mother's face flashed before her eyes. "I can't give up now," she whispered to herself. The light turned green. The car moved forward. Ryan's attention shifted to the radio again in that one moment. Alina took a deep breath and pulled the door handle. The door swung open. The cold wind rushed in. Ryan shouted, "Wait!" But it was too late. She jumped out into the rain and started running barefoot with all her strength. The siren wailed again. "Stop! Come back!" Ryan yelled as he ran after her. But Alina was faster than fear. She darted between parked cars, her small figure disappearing into the fog. The medicine box was pressed tight to her chest, her heart pounding like a drum. She turned into a narrow street filled with garbage bins and broken lights. Dogs barked, the wind howled. Her breath came in short gasps, every step echoing through the wet alley. Her legs ached, her feet cut on the sharp stones. But she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Behind her, Ryan followed, his flashlight cutting through the dark. "Alina, listen to me." "You'll get hurt," he shouted, but she didn't look back. She ran harder, her hair flying behind her. Her tears lost in the rain. The alley ended in a dead end. A tall wall stood before her, too high to climb. Alina looked around, her mind racing, her breath trembling. The footsteps behind her grew louder. He was close. She spotted a narrow passage between two buildings. Barely wide enough for her, she squeezed through, scraping her arms on the rough brick, and disappeared into the shadows. Ryan reached the wall and stopped. He turned off his flashlight and listened. The sound of dripping rain, the faint rustle of movement. "She's smart," he muttered, half frustrated, half impressed. He followed the sound, moving quietly, trying not to scare her. Alina came out on the other side, into an old market street. All the shops were closed, shutters down. The streetlights flickered weakly. She stumbled forward, clutching her side in pain. Her body was tired, but her spirit refused to break. She reached a small bridge over the city's drainage canal. The dirty water below rushed fast. For a second, she thought of hiding under it, but she knew it was too dangerous. She leaned against the railing, breathing hard, trying to calm herself. Her hands trembled as she looked at the medicine box. She whispered softly, "Mom, just hold on a little more." Then a voice came from behind her. "Alina." It was Ryan, standing a few feet away, his flashlight off, his face calm. He didn't point a gun, didn't shout. He just stood there, soaked in rain, looking at her with tired eyes. "Please," he said softly, "you'll catch a cold. And your mom wouldn't want that." Alina shook her head, stepping back slowly. "You don't understand," she said through tears. "She will die if I don't take this now." Ryan took a slow step closer. "I do understand," he replied quietly, "more than you think." For a moment, there was silence, only the sound of rain. Alina's legs gave way and she sank to her knees. Sobbing, Ryan walked over, picked up the medicine from her hands and knelt beside her. He didn't handcuff her this time. Instead, he took off his jacket and placed it over her shoulders. "We'll go to your mother," he said firmly. Right now, Alina looked up, confused, afraid to believe it. Ryan stood up, holding the medicine, and helped her to her feet. "Trust me," he said. "We'll save her." And for the first time that night, Alina nodded. The rain began to slow, the storm fading as if the sky itself was watching them. As they walked toward the car, Alina glanced back at the dark alley she came from. It felt like another world, the world of fear and hopelessness. Now a tiny light of faith glowed in her heart. She didn't know what would happen next, but for now, there was one truth. She wasn't running anymore. The night was still heavy with rain. The city lights reflected on the wet streets as Detective Ryan drove silently. Alina sat beside him, wrapped in his jacket, her eyes fixed on the medicine box resting in her lap. Her fingers trembled every time the car hit a bump. She looked pale, frightened, but there was a quiet strength in her face. Ryan didn't say a word. He was thinking and about what to do. What was right, what was wrong. The law said he should arrest her, take her to the station, write a report. But his heart said something else. This wasn't a thief. It was a daughter trying to save her mother. A daughter who had no one, no money, no hope. When they reached the small police station, the lights inside were dim. The rain pattered softly on the windows. A sleepy officer at the desk looked up, surprised to see them. Ryan simply said, "I'll handle this," and led Alina to a small room at the back. The room was cold, with a single table and 2 chairs. A flickering bulb buzzed above them. Alina sat quietly, clutching the medicine, her eyes lowered. Ryan placed a cup of hot tea in front of her. "Drink it," he said softly. "You look like you haven't eaten in days," she hesitated, then took a small sip, her hand still shaking. After a moment, Ryan sat across from her. He spoke in a calm, kind voice. "Alina, tell me the truth. Why did you take the medicine?" She didn't look up. Her voice was low, almost breaking. "My mother. She's very sick. The doctor said she needs that medicine tonight, but I had no money." Her eyes filled with tears. "I asked everyone for help. No one listened. She couldn't finish the sentence. Her throat closed with guilt. Ryan leaned back, looking at her, this small girl, soaked, shivering, and broken. He wanted to tell her it was okay, but the badge on his chest reminded him of his duty. He asked quietly, "How old are you?" 17, she whispered. "And your father?" "He died 2 years ago, in a factory accident." Ryan felt a lump in his throat. He didn't need to ask more. He already knew her story. He stood up and walked to the window, watching the rain slide down the glass. He remembered his own childhood, his mother coughing in bed. He remembered standing outside the hospital, counting coins in his hand. He had been poor once too. He had felt that same helplessness. Maybe that's why he became a cop, and to stop pain like this. But tonight, the line between right and wrong was blurring fast. Behind him, Alina spoke softly. "Please, sir, don't take me to jail. My mom is waiting. She's alone. She needs me." Her voice cracked as tears rolled down her cheeks. Ryan turned and walked closer. Placing the medicine back in her hands, he said, "Do you promise me you'll never steal again?" She nodded quickly. "I swear never again," before he could answer. Another officer entered, holding a piece of paper. "Sir, we got a call from the hospital. An unconscious woman was brought in. Name's Mira, lives near 9th Street. Alina's head shot up, her eyes wide. "That's my mother," she cried, standing up. Ryan looked at her, then at the paper, and his heart skipped. He grabbed his keys and said, "Let's go." The car raced through the wet streets again. This time Alina wasn't scared. She was praying, whispering her mother's name. Ryan's hands gripped the wheel tightly. He didn't say anything, but his mind was full of hope and fear mixed together. When they reached the hospital, the smell of antiseptic filled the air. The waiting room was quiet except for the beeping machines and tired nurses moving around. A doctor came out of a room looking serious. Ryan stepped forward. "Mira Khan, how is she?" The doctor sighed. "We're doing our best. But she needs that medicine immediately." Alina rushed forward, holding out the box. "Here, please use this," she said, her voice trembling. The doctor took it, nodded, and hurried back inside. Ryan watched as Alina stood frozen at the door, her eyes wet, her lips whispering prayers. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "She'll be fine," he said. "You did the right thing." Minutes passed like hours. Finally, the doctor came out with a tired smile. "She's stable now," he said. "You saved her life." Alina covered her mouth. Tears streaming down her face, she turned to Ryan and whispered, "Thank you." He looked at her, trying to hide his emotions. "Don't thank me," he said quietly. "Thank your heart. It never gave up." As they stood there in the hospital hallway, the rain finally stopped outside. The night that began with desperation ended with a fragile hope. Ryan knew tomorrow he would have to explain everything to his boss. He might even get in trouble for letting her go. But as he looked at the girl hugging her mother through tears, he knew he wouldn't regret it, not for a second. The city outside was silent again, washed clean by the storm. And inside that small hospital room, a new story was beginning. A story of kindness, sacrifice, and a heart that refused to break. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beeping of a monitor. A soft light glowed over the bed where Mira, Alina's mother, lay still. Her face looked pale and tired, her breathing slow and weak. The oxygen mask covered half her face and her hands trembled slightly under the blanket. Outside, the night sky was turning gray. The storm finally over, Alina sat beside her mother, holding her hand tightly. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but she couldn't stop smiling. The medicine had worked, her mother was alive, but the fear of losing her still clung to her heart like a shadow. She whispered softly, "Mom, I'm here. Everything's fine now." Her mother didn't open her eyes, but her fingers twitched as if she heard her. Detective Ryan stood by the door, watching the scene silently. He had seen many things in his life: crime, pain, greed, loss. But this moment was different. This was pure love, a love that had broken every rule and yet felt so right. He turned to leave, but the doctor stopped him. "She's weak," the doctor said. The infection was spreading fast. "That medicine came just in time," Ryan nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and guilt. He had helped her break the law, but maybe just this once. The law had needed to bend. A few hours passed, and dawn broke through the hospital windows. The city outside started to wake. Cars, voices, life returning after the storm. Inside the small room, Mira's breathing grew steadier. Finally, her eyes fluttered open, her voice barely a whisper. "Alina?" Alina jumped up, her face lighting with hope. "Yes, Mom, it's me, I'm here," she said. Gripping her hand tighter, Mira blinked slowly. Trying to understand where she was, her lips moved weakly. Where did you get the medicine?" Alina froze, her heart pounding. She didn't want to lie, but she didn't want her mother to worry either. I got help, Mom," she whispered. "Don't worry about it. You're safe now." But Mira wasn't a fool. She saw the scratches on Alina's arms, the bruises on her legs. A mother's heart knows when her child has suffered. Tears welled in her eyes as she reached up and touched Alina's cheek. "What did you do, my child?" she whispered. Alina shook her head, unable to speak. Her lips trembled as tears rolled down her face. "I couldn't lose you, Mom," she finally said, her voice breaking. "I did what I had to do." Mira's heart ached, not from sickness, but from love and guilt. She wanted to hug her daughter, tell her everything would be fine. But before she could speak, the door opened. Detective Ryan stepped in quietly, holding 2 cups of tea. He handed one to Alina and smiled faintly. "How are we feeling today?" he asked gently. Mira looked at him, confused. Alina hesitated, then said softly, "Mom, this is Detective Ryan. He helped me." Ryan smiled, but Mira's eyes filled with worry. "You're a police officer," she whispered. Her voice weak, Ryan nodded. "Yes, ma'am, but right now, I'm just someone who wanted to help." For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the sound of the heart monitor filled the room. Then Mira said, "You shouldn't have helped her. She broke the law." Ryan looked down. "Maybe," he said quietly, "but sometimes the heart knows what the law doesn't." The doctor entered again, checking Mira's vitals. "She'll need rest and food," he said. "But she'll recover." Relief washed over Alina's face. She thanked him again and again. Ryan walked to the window, watching the morning sun rise over the wet streets. He knew this peace wouldn't last soon. His department would ask questions about the theft, the missing report, the evidence he never filed. He was risking his job for this girl. But strangely, he didn't care. Later that day, as Alina helped her mother eat soup slowly, a nurse walked in with a newspaper. On the front page was a headline: "Girl steals medicine to save her dying mother. Arrested and released by compassionate officer." Someone at the hospital must have shared the story. The article spread fast with photos of Alina holding the medicine box. Tears in her eyes, people online called her brave. Others called her foolish, but one thing was clear. Her act had touched hearts across the city. Mira read the headline with tears in her eyes. She looked at her daughter and said, "You've changed more lives than you know." "Alina," Alina smiled faintly. "I only wanted to save you." "Mom." Ryan entered the room again, holding a small bouquet. He placed it by Mira's bedside and said, "The world knows your story now." Mira smiled weakly. "Then let them learn what love really means." As the sun rose higher, a warm light filled the room. Alina rested her head beside her mother's hand. Finally at peace, Ryan stood by the door. feeling something stir inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. Maybe hope, maybe belief that kindness could still change things. Outside, the city buzzed with new energy. But inside that small hospital room, 3 souls shared a quiet victory, one born from pain, one from love, and one from the courage to do what was right. Morning light filled the hospital corridor. The smell of disinfectant and coffee mixed in the air. Detective Ryan stood near the vending machine, holding a paper cup of coffee that had gone cold. He hadn't slept all night, his eyes red, his mind heavy. The events of the last 24 hours played in his head again and again. He had helped a thief escape punishment. He had broken protocol, hidden evidence, and ignored procedure. But when he remembered Alina's face soaked in rain, holding that box of medicine like her mother's heartbeat, something inside him whispered that he did the right thing. Through the glass window, he saw Alina sitting beside her mother. Mira was weak but awake. Her hand gently stroked her daughter's hair as they both smiled softly. It was a sight Ryan couldn't look away from. It reminded him of everything he had lost long ago. His own mother had died in a small clinic when he was just 18. He couldn't afford her medicine either. That day, he had promised himself he'd never let another person suffer like that again. But now his phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a call from Captain Morris, his superior. "Ryan, I saw the papers," the captain said sharply. "Tell me that story isn't about you." Ryan closed his eyes, took a slow breath and said, "It is, sir." There was a long pause. "Come to the station," the captain said coldly. "We need to talk." Ryan hung up, knowing what that meant. He could lose his badge, his job, maybe even his career. But as he looked at Alina through the glass, smiling for the first time in days, he whispered to himself, "Some choices are worth it." He walked into the room quietly. Alina turned and smiled. "Detective Ryan, Mom just ate soup for the first time." Ryan smiled back. "That's good news." Mira looked at him, her eyes full of both gratitude and guilt. "Officer," she said softly, "you risked your job for us. I can't let that happen." Ryan shook his head. "You don't worry about that, ma'am. Your daughter did what any good person would do for love." Just then, a nurse entered with an envelope. "Sir," she said to Ryan, "someone dropped this off for you." He opened it. Inside was a short note and a folded letter from the city council. It said the mayor wanted to meet the officer from the newspaper story. Ryan frowned, confused. He wasn't expecting praise. He was expecting punishment. Later that afternoon, Ryan arrived at the police station. Every pair of eyes turned toward him. Some officers clapped quietly, others whispered. The captain waited in his office, expression hard. When Ryan stepped inside, the captain threw the newspaper on the desk. "So you're a hero now," he said bitterly. Ryan stayed calm. "I didn't do it for fame, sir. I did it because it was right." "Right?" The captain barked. "You let a suspect go free. You destroyed a case file. You—" He stopped suddenly, rubbing his temples. "Do you realize the public is calling you a saint?" Ryan looked at him, surprised. The captain sighed. "The mayor called this morning. He said your act of mercy brought hope to people. The department is under pressure not to punish you." Ryan stood silent, unable to believe it. "So," the captain said, "you'll keep your badge, but don't let your heart rule you next time." Ryan nodded slowly. "Yes, sir," but deep inside, he knew he would do it again if he had to that evening. He returned to the hospital with a small box in his hand. Inside were 2 sandwiches, a thermos of soup, and a small pink scarf. When he entered Mira's room, Alina looked up in surprise. "You came back," she said, smiling shyly. Ryan placed the box on the table. "Lunch delivery from the police department." They laughed softly, and for the first time Ryan felt peace. As the night settled, Alina sat beside her sleeping mother. Ryan leaned against the doorframe, watching quietly. Alina looked up and said, "Detective, do you ever regret being a police officer?" He smiled faintly. "Sometimes, but not today," she nodded. "I thought all policemen cared only about rules," Ryan chuckled. "Maybe. But sometimes rules forget the people they're meant to protect." Suddenly, a nurse rushed in, her face pale. "Detective Ryan, there's a problem. The pharmacy owner just filed a complaint again." Alina froze, the color draining from her face. Ryan's jaw tightened. "Of course he did," he murmured. The nurse continued. "He says he wants the girl arrested for stealing." Alina looked terrified, her hands gripping the bedsheet. "Please, I didn't mean to." Ryan raised his hand gently. Don't worry, I'll handle it. He walked out of the room, his mind spinning. If he protected her again, it could cost him everything this time, but if he didn't, she'd go to jail. He stopped at the end of the hallway. Looking out at the city lights, rain started to fall again. Softly this time, he whispered to himself, "What's more important, my badge or my promise?" His eyes hardened, his heart clear. He turned back toward the room. He had made his choice. The courtroom was silent. The only sound was the ticking clock on the wall and the faint whispers of reporters sitting in the back rows. Alina sat at the defense table, her hands clenched together, her eyes filled with fear. She wore a plain dress, her hair tied neatly, but her face showed sleepless nights and heavy worry. Her mother, Mira, sat behind her in a wheelchair, pale but alive. Beside her stood Detective Ryan, his expression calm but his heart racing. The judge entered, an elderly man with tired eyes. Everyone stood up, the sound of chairs scraping the floor echoing through the room. The judge sat down and looked at the papers before him. He adjusted his glasses and said, "This is the case of Alina Khan, charged with theft of medical property." His voice was deep, serious and heavy with authority. Alina's lawyer stood, a young woman with kind eyes. She began softly, "Your Honor, my client is not a criminal. She is a daughter who acted out of love, not greed." The judge nodded slightly. "And yet, she broke the law." The lawyer replied, "Yes, but laws were made to protect life, not to punish the desperate." A murmur spread through the courtroom, people whispering among themselves. The prosecutor stood next, a strict man in a dark suit. "Your Honor, theft is theft regardless of reason," he said firmly. "If we forgive this girl, what message do we send? That laws can be broken whenever emotions are involved?" He turned toward Alina, his tone sharp. "She didn't ask the authorities for help. She took what wasn't hers." Alina lowered her eyes. Her heart sinking, Ryan clenched his fists, fighting the urge to speak. The judge looked toward Alina. "Do you wish to say anything before I make a decision?" Alina stood slowly, her knees trembling. Her voice was quiet, trembling, but every word came from her heart. "Your Honor," she began, "I didn't steal because I wanted to. I stole because my mother was dying, and no one listened." Her eyes filled with tears, her voice breaking. "If saving her was wrong, then I accept whatever punishment you give." A gasp spread through the courtroom. A few people wiped their eyes quietly. Mira reached out her hand from her wheelchair and whispered, "That's my daughter, Your Honor. She's all I have." The judge looked at her, a frail mother, eyes full of love and pain. He sighed deeply, rubbing his forehead. Then he turned to Ryan. "Detective Ryan, I believe you were involved in this case." Ryan stepped forward, his voice steady. "Yes, Your Honor, I arrested her," he said. "But I also saw the truth that she wasn't running from the law. She was running from time." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Explain." Ryan nodded. "Her mother was dying, the pharmacy was closed. She begged for help, but no one cared. I've seen real criminals, and she's not one of them. She's a child who believed love was stronger than fear." The courtroom fell silent again. The judge leaned back, thinking deeply. He looked at the prosecutor, then at the lawyer, then at Alina. For a long moment no one moved. Finally he spoke, his voice softer now. "Sometimes the law must listen to the heart," he said. The room went still. Everyone leaned forward. The judge continued. "What Alina did was wrong, but her reason was pure and her act saved a life, not destroyed one." He paused, then added, "The court declares her not guilty." The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Reporters rushed to take notes, cameras flashed. Mira burst into tears. Covering her face, Alina stood frozen, unable to believe it. Ryan smiled faintly and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're free," he whispered. The prosecutor sat down quietly, defeated. Even he couldn't deny the justice in the judge's words. The judge raised his hand and said, "However, let this be a lesson. Mercy is not the end of law. It is its purpose." Then he looked directly at Ryan. "And to the officer who chose compassion over duty, you remind us what justice truly means." As people clapped softly, Alina turned to her mother. She rushed to her and hugged her tightly. Both crying in each other's arms, reporters took photos. One headline already forming: "Court forgives girl who stole to save her mother. Law meets humanity." Outside the courthouse, the crowd waited. People cheered when Alina and Mira came out. Some offered flowers, others clapped with warm smiles. Alina looked around, overwhelmed. She whispered to her mother, "Mom, I didn't think the world could be this kind." Mira smiled. "Sometimes it takes one brave heart to remind it." Ryan walked beside them quietly. As they reached the steps, Alina turned to him. "Detective," she said, "if you hadn't helped me, none of this would have happened." Ryan smiled, looking up at the cloudy sky. "Maybe we were all just meant to meet that night," he said softly. The rain began to fall again, gentle this time, like a blessing from the heavens as the raindrops touched her face. Alina felt something lift inside her. The weight of fear, guilt, and pain washed away. She looked at her mother and whispered, "We made it, Mom." Mira nodded, tears mixing with the rain. Ryan watched them walk away, feeling something he hadn't felt in years: peace. The world outside was loud and fast, but for that moment, everything was still. Justice had spoken. But more than that, humanity had won. Weeks passed since the courtroom verdict. The story of Alina and her dying mother had spread across the city like wildfire. People who had once walked past her in the rain now spoke her name with pride. Newspapers called her the girl with the golden heart, and strangers sent letters filled with blessings. But Alina didn't care about fame. She only cared that her mother was alive and smiling again. Their small house was repaired by kind neighbors who had read about their story. The leaky roof was fixed, the walls were painted, and a small wooden sign now hung by the door. It read, "Hope lives here," every morning. Alina woke up early, made tea for her mother, and looked out at the brightening sky. The days that once felt full of pain now carried peace. Detective Ryan often visited them. Sometimes he brought food, sometimes just quiet company. He had become like a part of their small family. Mira would always say, "If angels wear uniforms, they probably look like you." Ryan would laugh softly. Embarrassed but happy. In his heart, he knew meeting Alina had changed him too. She reminded him that doing good didn't always mean following every rule. Sometimes it meant following your conscience. One morning, as Alina sat outside hanging clothes to dry, she saw the mailman walking toward her with a small envelope. It was from the city hospital. Inside was a letter offering her a part-time job in the pharmacy department. They wrote, "Your compassion inspired us. We believe someone with your heart belongs here." Alina's hands shook as she read it aloud, her eyes filling with tears. She ran inside and hugged her mother tightly. "Mom, they want me to work at the hospital," she said joyfully. Mira smiled, her voice trembling. "Then go, my daughter. The same place that once saved me. Now you'll help save others." That same day, Alina put on her simplest dress and walked into the hospital. The same halls that once carried her fear now echoed with her footsteps of purpose. The nurses smiled at her, and even the doctor who treated her mother came to greet her. "Welcome back, hero," he said kindly. Alina blushed, shaking her head. "I'm no hero. I just did what any daughter would do." As weeks turned into months, Alina became a familiar face at the hospital. She learned how to organize medicine, talk to patients, and help those who couldn't afford treatment. Whenever someone cried for help, she remembered her own night of desperation, and she always found a way to comfort them. People said there was something different about her, a calmness, a kindness that healed more than medicine could. One evening after her shift, she found Detective Ryan waiting outside. He leaned against his car, smiling softly. "You look like you belong here," he said. She smiled back. "Maybe this is where I was meant to be." Ryan nodded. "You've done more for this city than most of us ever could." She shook her head. "No, you did, Detective. You listened when no one else did." He looked away, hiding the emotion in his eyes. "Let's just say we both followed our hearts," he said quietly. As they walked together, Alina noticed a poster on the hospital wall. It showed a new charity program, "Medicine for Every Heart." Below it, in small letters, it said, "Inspired by the story of Alina Khan." She stopped in her tracks. Tears forming again, Ryan smiled. The hospital and pharmacy owners teamed up. "They started this to make sure no one else has to go through what you did." Alina covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "People actually changed," she whispered. Ryan nodded. "Sometimes it just takes one person to remind others what humanity means." Months later, Mira grew stronger, her laughter filling the small home again. On her birthday, the mayor himself visited their house. He brought flowers and a plaque engraved with the words, "To the heart that changed lives." Alina stood there, speechless, holding the plaque as her mother clapped with joy. Ryan stood beside them, proud but quiet. It wasn't about awards or praise. It was about the lives that were now safer because of one act of love. That night, Alina stepped outside alone, the sky glowing with stars. The cool breeze brushed against her face. She looked up and whispered, "Thank you. Maybe to the heavens, maybe to fate, maybe to everyone who had stood by her." She remembered that cold, rainy night, the fear, the sirens, the broken glass, and now, here she was, standing in peace, surrounded by hope. Her mother's voice called softly from inside, "Alina, come in. It's getting late." She smiled and turned back toward the door. Before entering, she looked up once more and said quietly, "Maybe sometimes doing the wrong thing for the right reason is what saves the world." Inside the house, the small wooden sign above the door swayed gently in the breeze. The words "Hope lives here" glowed softly in the moonlight. And somewhere far away, another heart, hearing her story, decided to help someone in need because love, once shared, never truly ends. It just travels from one heart to another, lighting up the world little by little.